Hello and welcome to the coding part of the lecture 2. So in this lecture, we'll see that how to write React components and pass the attributes through the properties. Okay, so let's start with cloning our repository, which we have created in the first lecture. So here is the React template we have created in the first lecture. So now we are just going to reuse this. So let me clone this one. So if you go to the code and then copy this, so this repository is shared with the first lecture. So I'll copy this, and now if I go to VS Code, and let's say that we want to create a uh, new repository. So this is the one that we created in the last class. So we want to clone in here. So we write git clone, and then we write this repository, and let's say that we want to uh, clone it. So right now it will clone to my project, right? So that if you don't want to clone inside of that, so let's say that we go one step back, cd this, and now let's say that we want to clone in here. So you write git clone and then the address. So it will come as whatever the name we have in the repository. Okay, so here it's come as a React template, and then we can rename it. So inside the React template, so these are the things that we have created in our previous lecture. So we have created the source has app.js, and which is welcome to React. We have index.html and that index.js, and then we have a plain CSS file, right? So these are the things that we created. So we'll work from here. Um, Now let's rename this repository as, so if you want to rename it, uh, let's say that this will be React component. Okay, so that will be our React component. And now let's go to that repository. So write cd React component. Okay, so now let's say that we cleared the screen. Now we are ready to work on this. So let's first see that whether it is working, right? So we need to install some of the dependencies, right? Because we don't have the modules, so we need to install it, right? So the installation will be done based on the package.json. So we need to install those dependencies. We need the parcel and React DOM. So as I mentioned in the README file, you see that how you can install the dependencies. So you just write npm install, and based on the um, JSON, it will install the dependencies, and then you just run it with npm start. Okay, so let's do this one. So write npm um, npm install. Okay. So you see that node modules is created, so it's installed some of those dependencies. So if you see, okay, these are the dependencies that we need. Um, Now we let's see that whether it's working. Npm start, um, and it's bring the welcome to React, right? So this is what we have done, and okay, so this was our first lecture thing, right? Now we say that we want to create a component. Okay, so component is basically a JavaScript function with the return statement. Okay, so let's create a greetings component. Okay, so you write function greetings, and this is a function, and you also need a return statement that's must. Okay, and then the other thing is that you should write a parent elements so that you can wrap all the JSX. Okay, so let's say that we write here, let's say it is 3, and then we just write hello. Okay, so now this component is created. Now we need to call it through the app, because this is our root, right? This is our root component, so we need to call the child or children of the app. So let's say that we call this one by writing like this. Okay, so React component are writing like this. So you write greetings. Okay, so greeting is a component, and then this component is defined in here. Okay, now we see that it says hello. Okay, so this component is working. um, Now if you want to, okay, let's say that we write something here, say write greetings. Okay, and then we'll say here and that through the p tag we say hello. Okay, uh, hello. Okay, now you can see that we have greetings, and under the greetings we write hello, right? And now the other things that I mentioned in the slides, that how you can pass the properties, right? The attributes through, go to the properties. So write greetings, and then let's say that we want to write a property name. Okay, and then let's say that name is Nawaz, and then this one you need to catch it through the props. Okay, and then you can write here, if you want to display this, then we need to write the curly braces, because that's the JSX expressions to write the JavaScript. So we write props dot name. Okay, so the props is basically an object, and this object has this attribute, the name attribute. Okay, now if I see here, it says hello Nawaz. Okay, so whatever the name you want to pass, okay, so that's, let's say that if you want to pass Alex, and then it will go as Alex. Okay, now let's say that this is just a single attribute. Let's say that you want to pass an object. Okay, so we can pass the entire object. So how we can do that? So we say, okay, so let's create an object. So that student object, so constant student, and then we'll create an object. The student will have, say, name is Alex, and then we'll say Alex will have an ID is, say, 10101, and then Alex has a GPA of, say, 3.5. Okay, so that's our student objects, and now let's say that we pass this one as a student object. So we write student, and then with that we pass this one as an object. So we said this is a student object, so we'll go. Okay, now the entire props is here, right? So you can write props dot, so you cannot just write props dot name, because it goes as a part of the student object. So you write props dot student dot name. Okay, so then it should tell you that hello Alex, and then you can also use the other information, right? So hello Alex, and then you can write your ID is, and then you can write props dot props dot student dot ID. Okay, and now you can see that you said, okay, hello Alex, your ID is this, and then you can say, and your GPA is, and then you can write props dot student dot GPA. Okay, so now this will go like this. Okay, so based on whatever you are passing, okay, so it will go. Let's say that you want to change the GPA value is 3.9, and then React will automatically change that and then render that the value that's you're passing. Okay, so this is how you create a React component. Okay, and then how you can pass the value. Okay, either you can pass as just a single attribute, okay, or you can pass as an object. Okay, you can also pass, let's say that if you want to create another component, uh, let's say that you want to create a um, button component. Okay, so let's say that button. Okay, and then you need to define what is the button component is, right? So you can create another component. So say function, and then we write button, and then button returns something. So it's a return, and then we'll say this is what you're going to return. Okay, so button will say that button, and then you say click me. Okay, so that's you create a button component, and then it's calling the button. And if you see, thus we have a button, although we have no action here, but we create a button component. You can add the CSS to so let's say that we write the button with a class name is button. Okay, now let's say that you want to define some CSS for this one. So I'll go to my design.css, and let's say that we define button. So that's the class selector, and we say that background color is aqua. Okay, now you should see that button color has been changed, right? So that's how you can add the CSS. As I mentioned in the slide, that you need to write the class name instead of class, okay, in the JSX. Okay, and then you see that we basically can call multiple components. We need to define them, and then one component can call other components. So let's say that you want to create another components and then you can call from here. Okay, so then it will be just chain of component. Let's say that we want to do, instead of button is called in here, let's say that we call the button is inside the greetings component. Okay, so we'll say this is my component. Okay, so you'll see that it's basically give you the same result, because right now what is happening that we have the app component is calling the greetings components, and the greetings components is calling the button components. Okay, so right now you see that everything is just in a single file, which is not necessarily will do when our project is getting bigger and bigger. Okay, so we need a modular structure. Okay, so that's where we call the module. Okay, so instead of creating everything in a single file, we can create separate modules. Okay, so let's say that we bring these greetings to a separate module. So modules is nothing but a JavaScript file. Okay, so let's go to our repository, and then inside the source we create a directory called components. Okay, so inside the components we can create a greetings components. So create a JavaScript file called greetings.js. Okay, now we can bring this thing, whatever we have done. Let's say that we cut this and brings to the greetings, right? So that's our greetings. Okay, now let's say that this is our default components greeting, so we can export it, right? Export default greetings. Okay, so this is the components we are exporting. Okay, we don't need to export this one, but we can also export it, okay, if you want. So we can also export this one. So let's say that since we are using greetings to call button, so we are just writing like this. This is our default export, and then we can import this one. Otherwise it will not work because they are not inside a same module, so they are in separate modules. So we need to import it. So write import greetings, and then it's coming from the dot components, which is the location of the greetings. Okay, now you should see that it's working as well. Okay, um, and now we have a separate, so the app is basically, I don't want to make it messy, right? So this is our main component, and then we can call the other component, uh, from the other module. So this is a very common structure of React. Okay, so you create a components repository where we create all the components, okay, and then we export them, and then we import it here. Okay, so this is called explicit right, it's explicit import. We can also do I mean, you can also write a different name when you want to import it. Okay, you said my greetings, and then you can change here my greetings. Okay, but for the implicit, let's say that you also want to export this one, so you write function export uh, button. Okay. So that's the named export, and then you can import it, right? Import button. Say that button. Okay, how we export it? So we said, okay, let's say that we write a uppercase, that by convention, and then we import it, import button from um, components, and then it's coming from. So we need to give this, and then it's coming from greetings. So you have double of this. So that's the named. So that's the named export, and then this is uh, the implicit importing. Okay, and then you can use it. So this is it about how to export, how to import. Okay, so we did not use the button because the button is already called by the greetings, but I'll just show you that example, that how you can export and import the named export, and how to import it if it is a named export. Okay, so this is the named export because this is not the default, right? So if it is not default, then you need to write this curly braces. Okay, and then also the same when you want to import it. Okay, so that's it. So here we discuss about how to write components, okay, and then how we can pass the value to another component, okay, and then how we can create nesting component, right? So is the greetings is calling the button, right? And then how you can do the export with the default export and the named export, and then how you can import it. Okay, and then how you can create the modules. It's nothing but you create separate JavaScript file, and then you define your components, and then you must need to export it. Okay, and then from the file where you're going to call that, you need to import it. Okay, so that's it about the React components, and see you in the next lecture with our next topic. Okay, so see you then.